First of all, why don't you explain to people who might not understand how this rebate system works and why it's jacking up the prices so much?
So this is just one aspect of the healthcare system that frustrates people in general. Back 10 years ago, when I took on the health insurance companies to get a better value for my own employees, I really started digging into the entire industry. And it's kind of broken from top to bottom. But let's focus in on this, because everybody runs into prescriptions. Back when I resigned as CEO of my company, I had to get a prescription filled. In my little hometown, a generic went for $10 one place, $34.50 another. That's crazy. So PBMs, only in an industry where you got huge margins could you have a layer, a middleman that makes money by deciding how the discount is split up. It doesn't make sense. Alex Azar is doing the right thing to get rid of the PBMs and the rebates, shed transparency on the whole healthcare industry, including healthcare companies, let consumers directly benefit, start driving prices down.
So do we need legislation for this? Because Secretary Azar said that he thought maybe with his leadership, maybe the private sector would come into alignment. And then just this morning, I saw an announcement that I think it was United Health said, wait a second, for new employers, you got to make sure that your employees actually get those rebate benefits. Is the private sector coming along anyway?
I'd love it that way. And sometimes you can use a big microphone to make a point, and I'm going to continue doing that. And whether it was coincidental or related to it, that happened a day after I think I dropped my bill. So it doesn't make me any difference if it would cascade to where all drug companies get rid of rebates to PBMs. You put PBMs out of business for parceling up discounts. If they still want to get a fee for advising somebody how to use the healthcare system, that's different. But it's just another reason that people don't trust the healthcare system and the cost of it.
So there's no question that people are dissatisfied with the cost of healthcare, and specifically prescription drugs. There was a poll done recently, I think it was by the Kaiser Foundation, basically said that people are really overwhelmingly disapproving of the prices paid. And in fact, some people don't even use the prescription medications that have been prescribed because they can't afford them. To what extent will this alleviate that problem?
It'll just be the start. So if the healthcare industry wants to have a business partner other than the federal government, it's got to get with it by becoming transparent. The insurance companies have made the thing so opaque, they want everything run through an insurance claim. Minor health care doesn't really need it, but the big thing we need, where do you spend so much money and never ask, well, how much is it? How much is it going to cost? When I actually lowered costs in my own business, I designed it to where my employees would have some skin in the game to at least investigate what the cost was. And then I built an insurance plan that encouraged their doing it. And we cut costs by 40 to 50%. And my employees haven't paid a nickel more in 9 years. But we had to pull teeth to get it done. And the industry, if it doesn't get with it, and I see signs that they're starting to with United Healthcare, with Eli Lilly, David Ricks is for the getting rid of rebates to PBMs. Right. They need to be more aggressive, and it's about transparency. So
I want you to put on another hat now as a member of the Budget Committee. We now have some budget requests from the administration coming up there. And refer back to your experience as a businessman, as a practical matter. Would you budget this way? For example, there's projections of 3% growth that most economists don't think is possible, and basically no recession over the next 10 years. Aren't we being a little unrealistic in what we're projecting, even before we get to the question of how we spend the money?
We're being terribly unrealistic. And, you know, I've been a real supporter of shaking up the system, which I think President Trump has done in general. But I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'm hoping this is just out there to start the negotiations. But defense was enabled significantly back in 2018, where it, was popped up almost $70 to $80 billion. So it really put it back in good shape. And the fact that it is so out of line and all the domestic programs were cut steeply, I'm a believer across the board. We're never going to fix the problem in D.C. if people want their own pet projects, want to cut everything else. And we're at the right on the cusp of trillion-dollar deficits, and if you extrapolate it into the future, it's $1.5 trillion soon. We're going to have some series of calamities, or a big one, bigger than 2008, and then we'll learn it the hard way. I'm hoping that this is just a start, but I've got the suspicion that it's similar to business as usual here in D.C., where people only want to cut what they're not interested in.
Well, and one of the things that has been cut in the new budget proposals, I understand it will be cut further, is funding for the FAA. So let's hook up the budget story with something very much in the news right now, which is that Boeing 737 that's under some question. Are we concerned, are you concerned that maybe we're cutting too much on things like the FAA and its ability to keep ourselves safe in the air?
Well, I think there are going to be priorities in the budget in general, and I don't think you can relate the current budget level of the FAA to what's happened with two 737 MAXs. All I can tell you is that when you have two occur in a short period of time, I would definitely err on the side of safety. And I think a few other senators have come out. I would be in the school of thought to where you ground these things until you know what's going on. But in general, resources are not the issue here in Washington, D.C. Spending grows and grows and grows every year. Revenues are growing at record rates. We have a discipline problem. We don't want to live like the rest of the world does, like the rest, all state governments do, like all successful businesses. We need to be freezing, not growing a budget by 3%.